So recall the motivation you generated earlier today, wishing that everything you do throughout the day will be only beneficial for others, yourself and others, all beings, the world, and not at all harmful to anyone. And on top of that, if you're comfortable with the idea, wish that everything you do will be a cause for your future attainment of enlightenment, awakening, Buddhahood, the most pure and perfect state of mind that exists, in order to be of the greatest possible benefit to all beings throughout space. So may this session be in accord with that motivation. May it be beneficial for ourselves, for others, for the world. So I'd like to start this session with a short meditation. This was taught by His Holiness to try to incorporate some of what we are learning in this retreat. So imagine that you are experiencing an intense emotion towards another person. It could be anger or attachment. So you could just imagine such a situation, or you could recall an actual experience where you did feel strong anger or strong attachment towards another person. And then imagine or recall how you would respond in a connection, an interaction with that person, with your mind caught up in this emotion. How did you act, speak, feel inside? And then compare that way of acting and feeling with that person to the way that you normally relate to people when you're in a normal state of mind, not caught up in anger or attachment. This is how do you normally feel and act with other people compared to that situation where you were caught up in the emotion. So His Holiness says that by doing this, we will learn to recognize the psychological process involved in a forceful affliction, like anger or attachment, and appreciate how grasping at some reified qualities of the other person lies at the root of an afflictive emotion. So according to Buddhism, underlying all of our afflictive emotions, like anger and attachment, is grasping at true existence or inherent existence, where we see ourselves, other people, phenomena, events, occurrences. We see all of these things as if they had a real, solid, independent way of existing all on their own. And this is actually false. It's not true. But by seeing things in that way, we get caught up in these strong, disturbing emotions. And that creates problems, both for ourselves and also for others. So that meditation is in a book called Practicing Wisdom, this one. And it's based on teachings given by the Dalai Lama on this 9th chapter of Shantideva that we're looking at. He gave these teachings in France in 2011, I think. So it's a very, very nice book, translated by Thupten Jinpa and edited by him as well. So very clear, and he goes through most of the verses, not kind of word for word, but at least gives a summary of each verse, and also adds a lot of other, discussion about emptiness and so on. So it's very nice. So there were lots and lots of questions that came in from yesterday. I'll start by replying to some of them, but I'm not going to do all of them today because there's just too many. We'd probably spend the whole session. So I'll do some of them today and others tomorrow and in the coming days. So some of the questions were related to the last point we were talking about yesterday. The 3 criteria for conventional existence. It is a very difficult one. Okay, so first of all, as I was just walking away, Venerable Tsepel asked a question, very good question, about how does the first of the 3 criteria apply to emptiness? So just background to that before answering it. So again, these 3 criteria are for conventional existence, things existing conventionally in a conventional way. Now this term, conventional existence, is not the same as conventional truth. It's confusing because the word conventional is there in both of them, but conventional truth we already looked at. Those are phenomena, everything other than emptiness. Whatever exists that isn't emptiness is a conventional truth. So conventional truths are things that we can know, can experience. Now, conventional existence is a mode of existence, a way of existing of things, existing conventionally. And it can also be called dependent existence or interdependent existence, because it means things exist in dependence on other things. Nothing is standalone, autonomous, independent. Everything exists dependently. And that's the meaning of conventional existence. So conventional existence is the only kind of existence that there is. It's the only possible way that anything could exist. Because nothing is independent. Nothing exists independently. Okay? So that applies to emptiness as well. Emptiness exists conventionally. Even though it's not a conventional truth, but it does exist conventionally. Because the opposite to conventional existence, or the alternative to conventional existence, is ultimate existence. And what does ultimate existence mean? No. Inherent existence, yeah. So back on page, where was the notes? Page 2, I think. Page 2 of these notes, there was a box towards the top with a few synonyms of inherent existence. Inherent existence, true existence, ultimate existence. Okay, so ultimate existence is the same as inherent existence. And that means existing independently, objectively, in a very real way from its own side. And that's a false mode of existence. It doesn't exist. So ultimate existence doesn't exist. Nothing exists ultimately, even ultimate truth. So it is confusing because we have the term ultimate truth, which is emptiness, the emptiness of inherent existence of everything. And then we have this expression, ultimate existence. And it's easy to think, oh, it's the same thing, but they're actually opposite. So it takes a while to get all this stuff in your mind, but you do have it there on the paper. So ultimate truth is emptiness, and that does exist. Emptiness does exist. But ultimate existence is a false mode of existence. It's the same as inherent existence, independent existence, and that doesn't exist. That's what we are refuting, what we are denying. So nothing exists ultimately. Only everything exists conventionally. That's the only kind of existence that there is. So that includes emptiness. That applies to emptiness as well. So emptiness exists conventionally. So that's where Venerable Tsipel's question was coming from, because the first of the three criteria for something to exist conventionally is, according to how it's phrased here, it is known to the world, i.e., to conventional consciousness. So it's a good question. Well, how can emptiness be known by conventional consciousness? Okay, so I found the answer in this book, The Two Truths by Guy Newland. So this is a book all about the two truths according to Prasangika. So you can see it's not an easy subject. If you can write this much about the two truths, that shows it's complicated. So if you happen to have this book, you can find this on page 84 and 85. And so the three criteria here are found in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chenmo, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. That's the origin. I don't know if there's another origin from somewhere else, or this is something that he just formulated himself. But anyway, that's the source of this. And if you want to look that up, if you have those books, it's a set of 3 volumes in English. So in volume 3, which is mostly about emptiness, what page? Venerable Lamsel found it. 178, 179 in those books. If you want to read Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation. But that's what Guy Newland is also quoting from here. And so again, he gives the 3 criteria, slightly different. Well, yeah, it's pretty much the same. So the 3 criteria for something to exist in conventional terms: number 1, it must be well known to the world, i.e., conventional consciousness. Number 2, it must not be invalidated by conventional valid cognition. And number 3, it must not be invalidated by a reasoning consciousness analyzing the ultimate. That's worded a little bit differently. But basically, for something to exist conventionally, it can't be knocked out or invalidated by either a conventional valid cognizer nor an ultimate valid cognizer. And he gives an example. Well, he kind of skips over the first one for now and goes to the second one. He said the second requirement excludes, for example, a mirage being water, because the status of a mirage as water can be discredited by conventional valid cognition. In other words, a mirage may appear to be water, but conventional valid cognition can establish that it is not. Thus, a mirage does not exist as water, even in conventional terms. So let's say you're out in the desert and it's midday, the sun is up in the sky, very hot, and you look out on the horizon and you see this sort of shimmering, silvery blue appearance. And you think, oh, looks like a lake over there. And maybe you're with somebody who's been living in that place for a long time, knows it very, very well, and says, no, that's not a lake. You're seeing a mirage. Okay. So there's this appearance that looks like water, looks like a lake. And you can't tell if that's true or not. But this person is able to have a conventional valid cognizer because of knowing very well this area, and knowing also that when once the sun starts to go down in the sky, then even that appearance will disappear. Even the appearance of water will disappear. This person knows with confidence there's no water, it's just a mirage. So their conventional valid cognizer can discredit or invalidate your mistaken, it is a mistaken consciousness, seeing a mirage and thinking that it's water. So that's an example of the second thing of being invalidated by a conventional valid cognizer. And then he says the third requirement, being invalidated by an ultimate valid cognizer, excludes inherent existence, which must be refuted by ultimate valid cognition, and having been so refuted is thereby established as utterly non-existent. So this third type of, the type of consciousness mentioned in the third criteria or requirement is called an ultimate valid cognizer. So that type of mind comes about when we choose an object and analyze it to understand if that object exists inherently or not. We're looking into the object. How does it exist? It appears like real and inherently existing, independently existing, but is that true? Is that really how it exists? So you go through a process of analysis. You need to do some study to know how to do this, but we'll learn this later. You're analyzing the object. And if you do it well, you'll get to the point where you realize inherent existence isn't true, even though it appears, just like with the mirage, there's the appearance of water there, but when you analyze it, you don't find it. So you realize it's only an appearance, but it's not true, it's false. So this ultimate valid cognizer then refutes, negates, discredits inherent existence, okay? But it doesn't negate conventional existence. So this is the important thing. It's only, throwing away inherent existence, the inherent existence of an object, but it leaves the object there. Okay, so if you're analyzing a table, for example, and an ultimate valid cognizer realizes the table doesn't exist inherently, but it doesn't refute the table itself. It leaves the table. Like that expression, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It throws out the bathwater, but not the baby. It leaves the baby. So that's the function of that type of consciousness. It's just to refute inherent existence, but not conventional existence. So that may be a little hard to understand, but Lama Tsongkhapa really stresses it because it does happen. Some people, even great, brilliant yogis and masters, have made that mistake. When they refute inherent existence, they also refute conventional existence. And they even assert that conventional existence doesn't exist. So, Lama Tsongkhapa, really emphasized the importance of not refuting conventional existence, because that's very dangerous. Then you lose karma, cause and effect, sentient beings. So why bother? Why bother following the path to enlightenment? There aren't any sentient beings anyway. No suffering. No need to do anything to help sentient beings. Anyway, you can get into some really strange states of mind. Okay, so I'm still not answering the question, but I just wanted to share what he says here because I think it's quite helpful. Okay, so then, with regard to the first requirement, he says the precise meaning of the first requirement is problematic. And he actually mentions two problems, but I'll just talk about one. This is the one that Venerable Tsepel brought up. If emptiness exists, it must exist in conventional terms, since nothing is ultimately existing. So that was what I was saying before. The only way emptiness can exist is conventionally. It can't exist ultimately, because nothing is ultimately existing. Therefore, emptiness must meet these three requirements. So what does it mean to say that emptiness is well known to conventional consciousness? Okay, so then he again quotes from Lama Tsongkhapa, what is the meaning of conventional consciousness in this case? So Lama Tsongkhapa says he's referring to a consciousness which, this is from the Lamrim Chenmo, a consciousness which, while it may analyze its object, never questions or scrutinizes its object's mode of existence. Okay, so it's an object. It's a consciousness that might do a little bit of analysis, but not ultimate analysis. So it might look at an object and say, "Oh, this is cool. I wonder where it came from. What company was it made by? How much does it cost?" And so on and so forth. So it does some analysis, but not, does this object exist inherently or not? It doesn't do that kind of analysis. And Lama Tsongkhapa says that this conventional consciousness exists among all beings, not only among those who are innocent of philosophy, meaning those who never study Buddhist philosophy. And he quotes a passage from the Lamrim Chenmo, which says, the relationship between actions and effects, i.e. karma, the grounds and paths we take to reach enlightenment, and so forth, are not well known to the common person. Farmers and business people, they're not necessarily talking about karma. I mean, they might a little bit, but things like the grounds and paths to enlightenment probably don't discuss that. However, when such things are taken as objects through hearing and experience and so forth, they appear to ordinary minds that do not analyze how their final mode of being exists. Okay, so this, I think, applies to ourselves as well. Even if we don't have a full realization of emptiness or many other aspects of the path, we do hear about them. We go to teachings and listen to teachings about them. We read books about them. We talk about them. We think about them. We meditate on them. And so we can say then that emptiness is an object that is known by conventional consciousnesses, known to the world. Doesn't mean we fully realize emptiness, but we know about it. We can talk about it, we can think about it. So that seems to be the meaning of this first criterion. And just Guy Newland is continuing his train of thought. He says, although Lama Tsongkhapa's examples of topics unfamiliar to the common person include only concealer truths or conventional truths, why should we not assume that emptiness is also included in his and so forth? Certainly, Buddhists and students of Buddhism frequently hear about emptiness and reflect on emptiness without reaching the point of investigating exactly how emptiness exists. I think this adequately answers the first question of what it means to say that emptiness is well known to conventional consciousness. So what do you think, Venerable Sepo? Does that answer your doubt? Yeah. So, let's see. There are a few other questions related to these three criteria. Somebody else asked, what does it mean to know in the first criteria? It says known to the world. So known, I think that's answered by what Guy says. It doesn't necessarily mean you know it fully in every possible way, or having a direct realization. It's just you're familiar with it. You're aware of it. Your mind is able to take that as an object. So the word, when we talk about knowing, it's really good, if you want to, especially if you want to understand emptiness, it's really good to study Lorik. Lorik is the Tibetan term, and it's translated as awareness and knowers, or mind and knowing. It's all about the mind. We learn about the mind and what the mind is, how the mind works, different types of mind. Mind can be divided up into many different ways of knowing things, such as conceptual and non-conceptual, main minds and mental factors, valid minds and non-valid minds. So it's not easy. It's a little bit difficult, but it's very important, because that's actually a big part of this whole discussion of emptiness, is knowing, because we're trying to generate a state of mind that knows emptiness, that understands emptiness, that realizes emptiness. So what kind of mind is that? Well, it's very, very helpful to do that study of Lorik. Has Venerable taught it? So maybe on tuptenchildren.org you can find old. Yeah. And there's a few books, such as Elizabeth Napper's book, Mind in Tibetan Buddhism, and one by Geshe Rabten called Mind and Mental Factors, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, the word know usually just means mind and its functions. Yeah, that's Geshe Rabten's book, Mind and Its Functions. So know usually just means your mind is aware of an object. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to know it fully in all ways. Just, for example, when we see an object, we see with our visual consciousness. That means we know that object. We see, we hear, and so on. Okay. Okay, another question was, the person says, I was confused with the third criteria for conventional existence. I would understand that an Arya is able to see both the conventional truth, i.e. a table, and the ultimate truth, i.e. the emptiness of inherent existence of the table. But does the criteria mean that an Arya does not see the conventional truth anymore? If this was the case, how would an Arya interact with the world? Okay, so again, an Arya is a person who has reached the point where they're able to see emptiness directly. They have a direct perception. That is a mental consciousness, not a visual consciousness. It's not that you see emptiness with your eyes. That's not possible. We can't experience emptiness with any of our five senses. It's the sixth sense, the mental, sometimes it's called mental sense, sixth sense, but it's mental consciousness. That's the consciousness, like when we think, when we remember, when we fantasize, that's the mental consciousness. So that's the part of our mind that sees emptiness or experiences emptiness. So initially, we try to develop an understanding of emptiness, and we do that conceptually. We have a conceptual idea, conceptual understanding of emptiness. But eventually, we're able to break through that and come to a direct perception of emptiness, the mental direct perception of emptiness. That's quite an extraordinary experience. It's like your mind is just seeing emptiness nakedly, directly. non-conceptually. So an Arya is a person who has reached that point. But that doesn't mean they're always seeing emptiness directly. When they are in meditation, they're in a state of very deep, concentrated meditation, their mind focused on emptiness in this direct way. And they say, in that state of mind, that experience, all conventional things disappear. The only thing appearing to their mind is emptiness. So they don't even feel their body and have no awareness of any other person or anything else around them. They don't even see their mind. Even the mind seems to disappear. Subject-object duality disappear. You don't have a sense of I'm over here looking at emptiness over there, but it's just emptiness. So that's how it's described. I'm not talking from personal experience, but they say it's like that. So when they're in meditation like that, then conventional things disappear. But they're not always in meditation. They have to take breaks. And they want to take breaks because they want to, engage with other people, other beings, and they need to continue accumulating merit. So they practice giving and they practice patience and teaching and so on and so forth. So they do engage with the world and other beings. So outside of meditation, they do see conventional truths. They do see sentient beings. They see their own bodies. They see the world. They see everything outside of meditation. But at that time, they're no longer seeing emptiness directly. They can only do that when they're in meditation. But they still have a good understanding of emptiness. There's still what do you call it? Their mind is still influenced by the direct realization of emptiness. So it said they don't see things as before, as if they were, truly inherently existing. Inherent existence still appears because of the imprints in the mind. We have very strong imprints, like habit from countless lifetimes before of seeing things inherently existing. So things will still appear to exist that way, but they know it's not true. Like the person who in the desert, the one who lives in the desert, and he'll see the mirage too. He'll see the mirage on the horizon, but he's not fooled by it. He knows, even though it looks like water, it's not. He knows for sure there's no water there, but there's still the appearance of water. So in a similar way, an Arya, when they're outside of meditation, will still see things as if they exist inherently, independently, but they know that's not true. That's just like a mirage, like an illusion, and so on. So there's no need to worry, as in this question, that Aryas are not able to see conventional truths anymore and interact with the world. They definitely can, especially bodhisattvas, because they want to continue working to help sentient beings, continue to build up their merit, continue to get closer and closer to enlightenment. So they go in and out of meditation. There are times when they're sitting in meditation and meditating on emptiness, and there are times when they're not in meditation and dealing with the world. Okay, another question. This is a misunderstanding. Somebody misunderstood what I said. She says, you said that the mind was an exception to something that depends on causes and conditions. I didn't say that. Maybe I was talking too fast, but no, I didn't say that. Mind does depend on causes and conditions. It is an impermanent phenomena that depends on causes and conditions and changes all the time. What I did say was mind is an exception to other kinds of impermanent phenomena that come into existence, last for a while, and then go out of existence, like our bodies. Our bodies are born and they live for a while and then they die. And houses are built, they last for a while and then they collapse or fall apart or burned down or are pulled down or whatever. So most impermanent things are like that. They last only for a while. They have a limited lifespan. So mind is different, even though it is impermanent, it's changing moment by moment, but it will never go out of existence. It will last forever and ever and ever. Now we're ordinary beings, unenlightened beings, but we're trying to reach enlightenment. One day we will reach enlightenment, we'll be Buddhas, but our mind will continue to exist forever, even after enlightenment. And so mind, just to be clear, mind is impermanent. It does depend on causes and conditions, but it will never go out of existence. It will last forever. And the person is also asking, is there a difference between consciousness and the mind? No. According to Buddhism, there are different terms used. Mind, consciousness, knower, awareness. In Tibetan and Sanskrit, I think there's just lots of different terms, and they're all talking about the same thing. So they're not different. And the question also is, are mind and consciousness both ultimate? No, they are not ultimate. Only emptiness is ultimate truth. So mind and consciousness are conventional truths. So then, somebody else asked the questions related to this. If everything is subject to change and one's body can turn to dust, why does the mind stream stay as a mind stream? Why can it not die or be turned to dust like the body? What makes the mind stream different? Well, it's a different kind of phenomena. Our body is made of material, matter. Molecules and atoms and so on, and also all the physical things in the world like trees and rocks and water and buildings and so on. They're all made from matter, physical particles, and those disintegrate, and so our body will die and turn to dust or be burned up in a cremation fire or whatever. Whereas the mind is not physical. According to Buddhism. Science says otherwise. I don't know what they say. I think they have different points of view, but they say the mind is produced by the brain. The mind is a product of the brain. And so when the body dies, the brain doesn't work anymore, mind just disappears, goes out of existence. But that's not the Buddhist explanation. The mind and the body do interact and depend on each other. So the mind does, in a way, depend on the brain. We can see that because when the brain is damaged, for example, in an accident or illness, that does affect the mind. We have different kinds of experiences. Like Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a disease affecting the brain, isn't it? So when your brain is affected by that kind of disease, then you forget things, you can't even remember your own name, your memories from the past and so on. So obviously there's a connection between the brain and the mind, but the mind itself is not produced by the brain. It's independent of the brain in the sense that when we die and our body turns to dust or ashes or whatever, our mind doesn't die. Our mind continues. Now this is hard to understand, but it's the Buddhist explanation. So because it's not a physical thing, it can't turn to dust. And also, I think I remember hearing the Dalai Lama talk about this or reading somewhere. There's nothing that can destroy the mind. Nothing, there's no weapon or anything that can make the mind non-existent. So that's the challenge for whoever asked this question to think about. To see if you can come up with something that can destroy the mind, that can cause the mind to cease and become non-existent. So that's the Buddhist view. There's no antidote, no weapon, nothing that can stop the mind, make it go out of existence. Okay, just one more and then we'll carry on. This question is, occasionally I feel resistant to meditating on emptiness because even the idea of realizing it can feel scary, like everything will change. I recognize that this fear is due to my wrong views, but I'm not sure how to address it. What practices are recommended for overcoming this sense of fear around realizing emptiness? So there's actually some verses in chapter 9, maybe we might get to them today, where Shantideva talks about this. And so it sounds like it's common that people do feel afraid of emptiness, even back in his days. But he says it doesn't really make sense to be afraid of emptiness, because realizing emptiness is the antidote to all of our suffering. But maybe it takes time to be convinced of that. So that's why it's really good to learn as much as you can about emptiness. Read books, like the one I recommended yesterday, Insight into Emptiness by Khenso Jamba Tekcho. That's a really good one. This is also a really nice one, Practicing Wisdom by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So read books about it, listen to teachings about it. Make yourself familiar with it as much as you can. And familiarity itself is a way of lessening fears. Like when you first meet a person, you might feel a little scared of that person. Maybe they have a really big body, maybe they have a kind of stern-looking face, so you might feel, ooh. But then if you get to know that person and you find out, there's things you have in common, and you find out, well, even though the person might look scary on the outside, they're really nice and so on, then your fear will go away. So just through getting to know them and familiarizing with them. So it's like that with emptiness. I think the more we get familiar with it, learn about it, and especially reading words by His Holiness the Dalai Lama or the great masters of the past, Nagarjuna, Shantideva, and so on, and what they say about emptiness and how important it is, how it's the remedy to all of our suffering, all of our problems that we've been experiencing for many, 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 many lifetimes, and so on. So then you start to feel more confidence in emptiness. So I think that's probably the best way to overcome that kind of fear. And don't kind of push yourself. I don't think that helps to push yourself, but do it in a friendly way, in a way that you're kind to yourself, compassionate with yourself. Also, this is something else that Shantideva mentions in the text, is to investigate the I that is afraid. When fear comes up, look behind the fear, under the fear. What is it that's afraid? Who is it that's afraid? We're going to get into that later. We're going to get into looking at the I, the sense of self or I that we have. So that's helpful. And also, they say it is good as a complement to learning about emptiness, reflecting on it and so on, to do practices of purification and accumulating merit. Purification is clearing away obstacles in our mind that come from our past, bad karma, negative actions that we've done, and also our habitual tendency to get caught up in disturbing emotions, anger and attachment and jealousy and so on. So those past, negative actions and negative attitudes have left imprints in our mind that also interfere with being open to emptiness and understanding emptiness. So doing purification is good to clear those away. And on the other side is accumulation of merit, positive energy. Like in the practice of Tara that's being done in this retreat, you have both of those. There's some purification and also accumulation of merit. So those two things are also helpful in building up the strength of your mind and the ability of your mind to be courageous about facing emptiness and understanding emptiness and so on. And pray to Tara. Remember, Tara frees us from all our fears. Okay, so again, there are other questions, but I don't want to spend too much time today dealing with those, and I will continue with them tomorrow, although there'll probably be more questions tomorrow as well. Well, it's good. I mean, the questions are really good, and it's good that people are really engaging with the material and thinking about it and coming up with these questions. Okay, so then, yeah, let's go back to the text. So up to now, we've looked at verse 2 of chapter 9, and then we went off and looked more at the two truths. So going back to chapter 9. So again, verse 2. So in the text that you have, which has just the root verses as well as the outlines, there's a boo-boo here. I don't know, some of you may have noticed it. So verse 2 is divided into two. The first two lines are the concealer, the conventional, and the ultimate are asserted to be the two truths. So that's just presenting the two truths. Then the second two lines, C and D, give the definitions. But the first line here says the concealer, the conventional, and the ultimate. So that shouldn't be there. That's a repetition of the first line of the verse, so it shouldn't be repeated there. So the second two lines of that verse are, the ultimate is not an object of utilization of the mind. The mind is said to be a concealer. So that is giving the kind of definitions of the two truths. So this is kind of puzzling when it says, the ultimate is not an object of utilization of the mind. Because if you take that literally, that means ultimate truth cannot be known by the mind. Now, if we take that literally, then it's kind of bad news. Because that means nobody can know emptiness. Nobody can know ultimate truth, even Buddha. So that would be bad news for us, because it's only by understanding emptiness that we are able to free our mind from all the disturbing emotions, all the obscurations and so on, and become enlightened. But apparently the Buddha himself did say this. I found in another text a quotation from the Buddha from a sutra called the Meeting of Father and Son Sutra. The Buddha said, ultimate truth is not an object of awareness. Okay, so we have to interpret that. We have to unravel what that means. So there's actually lots of different commentaries I've been looking at, but I'm just trying to stick to one. So the commentary by Abbey Dr. Gelson that you should have a copy of says this refers to dualistic mind. So when it says mind here, it's not just any mind, but dualistic mind. And the meaning of dualistic mind is a mind that sees things in a dualistic way. And there are different kinds of dualistic appearances. Some say 3, some say 4. So one kind of dualistic appearance, the main one that we're concerned with here, is the appearance of inherent existence or true existence. So I think my understanding is why that's called dualistic appearance is because when we look at an object like this, well, let's say the table, it's easy. We look at the table, there's the table, conventionally existing table made of parts having certain characteristics and so on. So that does exist conventionally. But because our mind is so habituated to seeing things as inherently existing, it sort of projects an overlay of inherent existence on top of the table. Again, we don't do that consciously, deliberately. It's just the way our mind works, instinctively, habitually. So the table appears to us mixed with this overlay of inherent existence, independent existence. So there's like two things there. There's the table, which is actually empty of inherent existence, and then an inherently existing table, which has been projected on top of it. So that's the main kind of dualistic appearance that we need to overcome. Another kind of dualistic appearance is the separation between subject and object. That there's a subject over here, subject meaning mind or awareness, a knower, okay, mind knowing, and then the object that is known by that mind. According to Buddhism, there always has to be an object. It's impossible for mind to exist without an object. It can never exist objectless. There's always an object that is known. There's these two things, subject and object, knower and object known. So actually that does exist. That's not wrong. That's not incorrect. But as I mentioned before, an Arya, when an Arya is in that state of meditative equipoise, strong, powerful concentration, meditating on emptiness, seeing emptiness directly, at that time, this sense of subject and object vanishes. There's no sense of a subject over here knowing and the object emptiness over there that is known. That's a kind of duality. And in fact, it does exist. It's not wrong, conventionally. There is mind. It's one kind of phenomena. It's an impermanent phenomena, changing moment by moment. And there is the object emptiness, which is a permanent phenomena. Doesn't change moment by moment. So they are two different things. It's not wrong to say there are two different things. But that sense of duality vanishes at that time. And it said, they use the expression like water poured into water. If you have a pitcher of water and you have a glass of water, and then you pour the glass of water into the pitcher, then the water from the glass becomes indistinguishable from the water in the pitcher. You can no longer distinguish those two kinds of water. They become completely merge in a non-dualistic way. So they say it's like that. That's the experience that the Arya has. It's like their awareness, their mind merging with emptiness in this completely non-dualistic way. So that's another kind of dualistic appearance. And then a third type of dualistic appearance is conventional truths. So the appearance of conventional truths, like, again, the Arya, the person meditating on emptiness, they have a body, they have a mind, and there may be people around them or things around them. So all those things are conventional truths. And they do exist. We're not saying they don't exist, but when the Arya is in that state of meditative equipoise on emptiness, all of those things disappear. They just don't appear anymore. Only emptiness. So that's another kind of non-duality or absence of duality. There's only one thing appearing at that moment, and that is emptiness. nothing else appearing. But again, that's not wrong. It's not wrong to have awareness of conventional things. A Buddha does. Even they say a Buddha has a very special mind, special way of knowing things, and that a Buddha is able to have direct experience of emptiness, seeing emptiness directly, and at the same time see all conventional things, their self, other beings, the world, and so on. Buddha is able to hold both of those things, ultimate truth and conventional truth, at the same time. But only a Buddha is able to do that. That's an incredible juggling act of the mind that nobody but a Buddha can do. Everybody else has to go back and forth between ultimate truth and conventional truth in terms of seeing them directly, anyway. And sometimes a fourth kind of dualistic appearance is mentioned too, and that's mental images. This is a little more complicated, but yeah, let's not go into that. So it's many of those first three kinds of dualistic appearances. So a dualistic mind then is a mind that has one or more of these dualistic appearances. Appearance of inherent existence, true existence, appearance of a subject-object duality, subject over here, object over there, and appearance of conventional truths. Okay, so most of our minds, I'm sure all of our minds are dualistic minds. The only real non-dualistic mind, that means a mind that's free of those kinds of dualities, is the Aryas meditative equipoise, directly seeing emptiness. Because only that mind is completely free of all dualistic appearances. Only one thing appearing, emptiness, directly appearing. So conventionalities disappear, conventional truths disappear, subject-object duality disappears, and inherent existence disappears. So all of those things disappear. So that's the commentaries say that's the meaning here when it says the ultimate is not an object of utilization of the mind. It means dualistic mind. But then again, do we really want to take that literally? Because that means only an Arya in meditative equipoise is able to know emptiness. And again, that's not completely true, because even before becoming an Arya, on the way to becoming an Arya, one can have a realization of emptiness, a conceptual one. That's the first realization of emptiness that we have, is conceptual. It's not direct. The mind isn't directly seeing emptiness. It's I guess we could say thinking about emptiness. And when we have a conceptual mind, with any of our conceptual minds, there is a duality there. There's the mind, there's the object, and the object of a conceptual mind always appears through the medium of a mental image or a generic image. I mentioned this yesterday because that is said to be another kind of permanent phenomena. So, for example, when we think about our mother or anyone else, our mother, if she's still alive, is somewhere else. Or even if she's not alive, we can still think about her. We can still have a mental picture of her. So that mental picture appears like our mother, but it's not our mother. Okay, our mother, some of you still have a mother alive somewhere. So she's there in that place, and you're sitting here in this place and, closing your eyes, thinking about your mother. So you have a picture of your mother. And it said that picture, mental picture of our mother, looks like our mother, and our mind even relates to that picture as if it was our mother, because we can have emotions about it. We can feel love or irritation or sadness or whatever. We can get emotionally involved just with that mental image of our mother. So it's like the mind at that moment. Of course, we would say, no, I know it's not my mother. It's just a picture of my mother. But still, at that moment, our mind is relating to that picture as if it's really our mother. But it's not. It's not really our mother. She's somewhere else. So the mental image of an object appears like the object, but it isn't the object. And the mind is not able to understand that or distinguish that. So this is what happens when you have an inferential or conceptual realization of emptiness. It happens in meditation. You're meditating on emptiness and you finally break through and get it. Ah, I realize emptiness. But it's still conceptual. So it said that at that time, you're having a mental image of emptiness. What is appearing to your mind is an image, a mental image of emptiness, and not actually emptiness itself. It's still a valid way of knowing emptiness. It's a valid mind. It's correct. You do realize emptiness, but not directly. Your mind isn't contacting emptiness in a direct way, in a naked way, but through the medium of this mental image. So why am I talking about this? I forgot. Yeah, so it's a dualistic mind. It is a dualistic mind because there's this duality. There's emptiness, and then there's this mental image of emptiness. It's a bit like looking through a window at something on the other side of the window. You do see the object that's on the other side of the window, but you're seeing it through the window, through this medium of the window. And it's not as sharp as if you go outside and see that object directly. Maybe that's a helpful way of understanding it. So in a similar way, when you have a conceptual or inferential realization of emptiness, you are seeing emptiness. You do see emptiness, but it's through this medium of a mental image. Your mind can't distinguish the mental image of emptiness from emptiness itself. But with continued practice and meditation, gradually, it said that mental image gets kind of thinner and thinner, finer and finer, and eventually it vanishes altogether. And then you're seeing, just like going outside, then you're seeing emptiness directly with a non-dualistic mind. So prior to that, you do have, you can see emptiness or experience emptiness with a dualistic mind, but not the same. I think that's the point. The way that you experience emptiness with a non-dualistic mind, with a direct perception, is much more vivid and powerful than seeing it with a dualistic mind, because it's the direct, non-conceptual, non-dualistic realization of emptiness that is able to cut our delusions, ignorance, and afflictive emotions. That's the only thing that will get rid of our disturbing emotions once and for all. And that doesn't happen with the conceptual, dualistic realization of emptiness. So that non-dualistic mind is very, very, very important. That's what we are aiming to achieve. So anyway, that's the meaning of that phrase. The ultimate is not an object of utilization of the mind, meaning dualistic mind. It's only an object in its full sense. The real meaning of emptiness is only an object of a non-dualistic mind, this direct perception of an Arya. And then the second line says the mind is said to be a concealer. So that's referring to conventional mind, like the minds that we have, most beings have, conceptual minds. So they could be valid cognizers, but they are not, not as valid, not as correct as this direct non-conceptual realization. And so the mind that knows conventional truths is a conventional mind. And so this is a way, in a way, talking about the definition of a conventional truth. As we saw before, it's that which is known by a conventional valid cognizer. An object found by a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality. And the concealer is a reference to ignorance. Ignorance that grasps things as truly existing or inherently existing. So that's kind of explanation of what the two truths are. So then the next section starts talking about how there are different systems, different views about how phenomena exist, and it gets into some arguments or refutations of the views of others, which we will skip, but we'll do a few of the next verses. So verse number 3 says, with respect to them, the supports of the transitory are seen to be of two types, yogis and common people. Among them, common supports of the transitory are damaged by yogi supports of the transitory. Yeah, it sounds a little strange, but basically what this is saying, there are two types of persons who experience the two truths. The first type of person are yogis, and the meaning of a yogi, or the definition, the criteria of a yogi in this context is a person who has a union of calm abiding and special insight. So I think here in America, in some meditation centers, they use the word yogi for anybody who meditates. Anybody who does meditation is a yogi. Which is okay, but this is a much more precise meaning. The term in Tibetan is Neljor. So it actually refers to somebody who's doesn't just meditate, but has achieved quite a high degree of meditative stabilization. They have calm abiding, so they're able to focus their mind on their object for long periods of time without any distraction. And on top of that, they have special insight. But special insight, normally when we talk about special insight, what does Venerable call it? Does she call it special insight or something else? Does she use that term? Yeah, I don't know if there are other. I mean, it's vipassana. It's Sanskrit is vipassana. And so normally, like in the Lamrim, when we talk about special insight, it's with regard to emptiness. You know, it's like how to meditate to realize emptiness. But actually, special insight can be developed with any object. It doesn't have to be emptiness. It could be impermanence. It could even be the breath. It could be a visualization of the Buddha. So any object can be used to develop special insight. So anyway, but a yogi is someone who has developed calm abiding and then gone further and also developed special insight. But that doesn't necessarily mean on emptiness. It could be something else. Because non-Buddhists, for example, they develop calm abiding and special insight, but it's in terms of, usually in terms of what's called mundane special insight. Kind of complicated, but anyway, the point of this is to achieve the concentrations. There's these 4 concentrations and 4 formless absorptions, and you can even be born in those places. But to do that, you develop calm abiding, and then you meditate on the faults, the defects of a lower level of existence, like the desire realm where we are, where it's very easy to see the faults of the desire realm, especially now. We have COVID-19, we have these politicians doing things that aren't necessarily very wholesome, and corruption in business, and so many problems in the world. It's very easy to see the problems of this level of existence. And then you think about the form realm, which is a higher plane of existence. And the situation there is nobody does any of the 10 non-virtuous actions. Nobody kills, nobody steals, nobody lies, nobody commits sexual misconduct. None of the 10 non-virtuous actions are done. So I was thinking, they probably don't have prisons. You probably don't need police and courts and prisons. And you probably don't need hospitals because they have bodies of light that wouldn't get sick and, injured and so on. And you probably wouldn't need psychologists to heal people who are depressed because everybody's mind is just so calm and peaceful and blissful. Anyway, in the text, they do describe the situation in the form realm. So you compare these two, desire realm and form realm, and you overcome your attachment to the desire realm. And you have this strong wish to be in the form realm. So you do that for a period of time, and eventually you achieve special insight. It's a special insight that realizes this, that realizes the desire realm sucks. Sorry, it's just horrible. I want to get out of here. And the form realm is just so much better. So that's a kind of special insight. And with that, you're able to achieve the form. You first achieve the concentration, the first concentration of the form realm. So you can be in that state of mind, your mind can actually be in the form realm, even if your body is still in the desire realm. That must be quite amazing. And there are people who do this. So people here in this world, they can go into meditation and mentally be in another world, in another realm. And then after death, they can even be born in that other realm. So anyway, this is a side issue, but it's just giving you some idea of what some yogis do, what they're able to do. But in our tradition, what we want to do with calm abiding and special insight is not to go to these other realms, because there's still samsara. It's still samsara. You're still not free of samsara. But we want to use calm abiding and special insight to get out of samsara, free of samsara. And to be able to do that, we need to realize emptiness. So we develop these states of mind and use them to focus on emptiness. So anyway, that's yogis. And then the second kind of person are ordinary beings. Ordinary beings who believe in inherent existence, who grasp at inherent existence. So these are the two kinds of beings, yogis and common people. And the commentaries say that these common people could be philosophers, they could be people who study philosophy and hold tenets, philosophical tenets. They could be non-Buddhists, and they also could be Buddhists. The lower schools, the non-prasangika schools, they actually assert inherent existence. They believe in and grasp it and assert inherent existence. So they're considered ordinary beings who accept true existence. But they could also just be ordinary folks, like farmers and shopkeepers and business people and so on. And then he says, the common supports of the transitory are damaged by yogi supports of the transitory. In other words, the views of the common people, the ordinary people, are damaged by yogis who have calm abiding and special insight. So the ideal yogis, because here he's talking about those who know the two truths. So in terms of ultimate truth, that would only be known by yogis who have achieved realization of emptiness. And ideally, they have a union of calm abiding and special insight into emptiness. That's the highest type of yogi, the Aryas. So those are the ones who know ultimate truth. And conventional truths are known by everybody else. So all the ordinary people, common people, both common people who don't study tenets, like farmers and so on, but also those who do study tenets, but still grasp at things as inherently existing. In the next verse, 4, in the first 2 lines, he says, even yogis, due to differences in their minds, are damaged by the successively higher. So he's saying here that there's kind of different levels of people. And this is from the point of view of what kind of views they have, what kind of understanding they have. There's just very ordinary common people who maybe never think about, never talk about whether things are inherently existing or not. But they still do believe in things as inherently existing because of ignorance that's been in our minds from beginningless time. And then there are those who study tenets, but they might still hold tenets that believe in inherent existence, because it's only Madhyamika, Prasangika, that refutes inherent existence. All the other philosophical schools, even in Buddhism as well as in non-Buddhism, do not refute inherent existence. So they don't actually know about ultimate truth. They don't realize ultimate truth. So basically what he's saying is the views of lower kinds of people, common people and so on, and also even views of lower yogis who might hold philosophical tenets are refuted by successively higher ones. And even among those who, like the Aryas, who have a realization of emptiness, who know who know ultimate truth, are, beyond grasping at inherent existence, they too have different levels. For example, on the Bodhisattva path, when you realize emptiness directly, you become an Arya, Bodhisattva Arya. But then you still have a long way to go before you're fully enlightened. So they divide that stretch of the path into 10 divisions, the 10 bhumis, or 10 grounds. And as they progress higher and higher through the different bhumis, the wisdom they have on higher bhumis or grounds can eliminate deeper levels of obscuration. So this is basically what he's saying here, is that there are these different kinds of beings with different levels of awareness and understanding, and those of higher levels are able to refute the views of those on lower levels. The second part of that verse, verse 4, says, by way of analogies that both assert, because one does not analyze for the sake of result. So you can see how, just reading this text, just reading the verses themselves, it's hard to figure out what he's saying. So you really need a commentary. So he's talking here about the Prasangikas, and they use analogies that are asserted both by ordinary people as well as by yogis and philosophers and so on. So Madhyamika, Prasangika, uses analogies to explain emptiness, and they use things that are understood as false, even conventionally, to illustrate how phenomena don't exist as they appear. For example, mirage. Okay, so I really like that example. Not everybody, but many people have seen a mirage, have experienced a mirage. So you know how it will appear as if there's water there, even though it's completely dry. There's not a drop of water. So it's just because of the conditions, the sun, the land, and the heat, and so on, that there's that appearance. So that's an easy to understand example of how there's some discrepancy between what appears and what exists. Another one that's often used, and this is something we all experience, is a reflection in a mirror, because most houses have mirrors, especially in the bathroom. And so whatever is in front of a mirror is reflected in the mirror and looks exactly like that. Yeah, so you look at that reflection in the mirror, it could be your face, your body, and so on, and it really looks like a person. And we know about mirrors, we know how they work, so we know that's not a real person there. But maybe you've had the experience of walking into a place you've never been before, and maybe the whole wall is covered with mirrors. So you don't even know there's a mirror. You can't see the kind of frame around it. You don't even know there's a mirror there. And your first kind of impression is, oh, there's somebody who looks just like me. Have you ever had that experience? Yeah. So it can fool us. You know, we can be fooled by mirrors, especially if we don't know they're there. So, yeah, what appears in the mirror really does look real. It really does look like there's a real person there, but it's not. So there's this discrepancy between what appears and what exists. There isn't a real person there in the mirror. It's just a reflection. Okay, so Madhyamika, Prasangika use these kind of everyday examples of things that help illustrate how, yeah, we do sometimes have the experience of seeing something and it seems real, it seems true, but it's not. So they use those to help us understand emptiness. In the second line, or the last line of that verse, it says, because one does not analyze for the sake of a result. So the commentaries say, this is an answer to an objection that somebody might make, a person who believes in inherent existence. People who believe in inherent existence think that for something to exist, it has to exist inherently. So they equate existence and inherent existence. And if you refute inherent existence, for them, that means you're refuting existence. If you say this table doesn't exist inherently, that means it doesn't exist at all. It's not here. There's no table at all. So their objection to the Prasangikas is, if you're refuting inherent existence, then you're refuting all the things about the teachings, the path, karma, cause and effect, practices such as ethics and giving, liberation, enlightenment, all these things would be thrown out. They don't exist at all. So then how would you even want to practice the path? So the reply to that from our side is, these things do not exist inherently or ultimately, but they do exist conventionally. When we don't analyze them, we don't search for the actual object within the parts of it, they are there, they appear, they exist, they function, they do perform functions. So there's no contradiction for bodhisattvas to engage in these kind of practices within understanding them to be empty of inherent existence. Let's just do the, oh, let's just do one more verse and then I'll stop and see if there's any questions. So the fifth verse says, mundane beings see things and conceive them to be real, not illusory. Therefore here, yogis and mundane beings debate. So the commentary says, this is answering a question somebody might have, saying, well, if things appear both to yogis who understand emptiness and to ordinary people, why even argue? Why debate? Why dispute over them? A yogi sees the table, an ordinary being sees the table, so why discuss it? So the answer to that is, there is a difference. An ordinary being will see the table and believe it to be a real, inherently existing table. Whereas a yogi who understands emptiness will see the table but knows it doesn't exist inherently. So even though they both see the table, they see it in a different way. So there is a need or a value to discuss and debate about it.